"This is your only chance, sentient. Act now or regret forever," declared his XYLAR co-worker. Kalen Rourke stood at the viewport of his personal starship, the Stardust Vagabond, admiring the crystalline spires of Neo-Alexandria's skyline as they glittered in the light of the binary sunset. His muscular frame was reflected in the transparent durasteel, and he adjusted the collar of his signature synth leather jacket, a relic from old Terra that had seen him through countless adventures. The ship's AI chimed softly, "Incoming transmission from an unknown source, Captain. Shall I patch it through?" "Go ahead, Lyra," Kalen replied, running a hand through his dark hair. A holographic display materialized before him, showing coordinates and cryptic glyphs that made his heart race. This was it, the kind of lead he'd been waiting for. The message contained references to an ancient shrine on a barely charted world, promising treasures beyond imagination. As he began decoding the message, another notification pinged. "Captain," Lyra announced, "I'm detecting a familiar energy signature approaching our docking bay." Kalen's lips curved into a knowing smile. "Let me guess, the Azure Phantom?" "Correct. It appears Miss Zelia has received similar information." Right on cue, the door to his ship's bridge hissed open. Zelia Valerius strode in, her form-fitting silver and black attire leaving little to the imagination. Her light azure skin seemed to shimmer in the artificial lighting, and her long cobalt blue hair cascaded down her back like a waterfall. "Well, well," she purred, leaning against the doorframe. "Fancy meeting you here, sentient." Kalen turned, crossing his arms over his broad chest. "Zelia, still breaking into other people's ships, I see." "Please," she scoffed, sauntering closer, "your security systems practically invited me in. Besides," she produced a data crystal from somewhere in her revealing outfit, "I thought you might want to compare notes." "And why would I do that?" Kalen asked, though he couldn't help but admire how her body sculptor hugged her curves. "Because," Zelia said, her violet eyes twinkling with mischief, "I bet my intel is better than yours. The Shrine of the Lost Celestials. Ring any bells?" Kalen kept his expression neutral, but internally his pulse quickened. She had the same lead. "Never heard of it." "Liar," she laughed, the sound like chimes in the wind. "Your poker face needs work, Rourke. I can see right through you, and not just because this outfit is distracting." He chuckled despite himself. "You know, one of these days, that overconfidence is going to get you into trouble." That's rich, coming from the man who once outran a quantum torpedo in an asteroid field. "That was different," Kalen protested. "I had a plan." "You had luck," Zelia corrected, moving to the star chart display. "But luck won't be enough for this job." She inserted her data crystal, and a holographic map bloomed to life between them. "The shrine's defenses are legendary, ancient tech, deadly fauna, the works." Kalen studied the map, noting the complex series of tunnels and chambers. "And let me guess, you want to work together?" "Don't be absurd," Zelia said, but her smile held a hint of something more than just professional rivalry. "I just thought I'd give you fair warning before I claim the prize for myself." "How considerate of you," Kalen replied dryly. "I'm nothing if not sporting." She retrieved her crystal and headed for the door, her hips swaying hypnotically. "See you planet-side, sentient. Try not to get eaten by anything before I can properly beat you to the treasure." After she left, Kalen turned back to the viewport, shaking his head with a grin. "Lyra, plot a course for these coordinates, and run a full scan on our systems. I want to know exactly how she got in this time." "Of course, Captain. Though I feel compelled to point out that you seem to enjoy these encounters more than you let on." "Just plot the course, Lyra." As the ship's engines hummed to life, Kalen reviewed the shrine schematics one more time. Something about this job felt different, bigger than their usual treasure hunts. He had a feeling his rivalry with Zelia was about to enter uncharted territory. The game was on, and this time, the stakes were higher than ever. The twin suns of Xylos Prime cast long shadows across the shrine ruins as two ships descended from opposite directions. The Stardust Vagabond touched down on the eastern landing pad with practiced precision, while the Azure Phantom gracefully settled on the western approach. Kalen emerged from his ship, thermal scanner in hand. The humid air clung to his skin as he surveyed the ancient structure before him. Massive stone columns, wrapped in bioluminescent vines, flanked a towering entrance carved with glyphs that seemed to shift in the fading light. "Impressive, isn't it?" Zelia's voice carried across the courtyard. She stood at her own entrance, her azure skin almost glowing in the shrine's ethereal light. Though I expected something more grandiose for a legendary site. The real treasures are always hidden beneath the surface, Kaelin called back, trying not to notice how the evening breeze played with her hair. Care to make this interesting? Zelia's melodic laugh echoed off the stone walls. What did you have in mind, Sentient? First one to reach the central chamber gets exclusive rights to the primary artifact. He patted his utility belt. Loser has to settle for secondary finds. Deal, she agreed, her violet eyes sparkling with challenge. But no sabotage this time. I haven't forgotten about the Cygnus Caves incident. Kaelin grinned. That was a legitimate tactical advantage. You locked me in a supply closet. You picked the lock in under 2 minutes. I'd call that a compliment to your skills. Their banter was interrupted by a low rumble from within the shrine. Both entrances began to illuminate, ancient mechanisms whirring to life after millennia of dormancy. Race you to the center? Zelia suggested, already moving toward her entrance. You're on, beautiful. They plunged into their respective corridors simultaneously. Kaelin's path immediately split into 3 branches. His scanner revealed recent energy signatures in the rightmost tunnel. Lyra, you getting readings from inside? Affirmative, Captain. The shrine's power systems are active, but unstable. I'm also detecting significant movement in the local wildlife. As if on cue, a screech echoed through the corridor. Kaelin spun around to see a pack of crystalline creatures, like wolves made of living diamond, emerging from the shadows. Their faceted bodies reflected his flashlight in dazzling, disorienting patterns. Zelia, he called over the comm, please tell me you're not seeing what I'm seeing. If you mean the gorgeous but deadly crystal carnivores, then yes, her breath was slightly labored, suggesting she was running. The legends mentioned guardian beasts, but I expected something more organic. Kaelin fired a warning shot from his pulse pistol, the energy blast scattering the pack temporarily. He used the opportunity to sprint deeper into the shrine, vaulting over fallen pillars and sliding under partially closed security doors. Having fun yet? He asked, hearing Zelia's own weapons fire through the comm. Oh, absolutely, she replied, nothing like mortal danger to get the blood pumping. Speaking of which, you might want to pick up the pace. I think I see the central chamber ahead. Kaelin cursed under his breath and increased his speed. The corridor opened into a vast, circular room with a domed ceiling that seemed to capture and amplify the bioluminescent light. Zelia emerged from her tunnel exactly opposite him, her hair slightly disheveled but otherwise looking unfairly composed. "Tai," she suggested, holstering her weapon. "I was clearly here first." "In your dreams, Sentient." They approached the center of the room, where a pedestal rose from the floor. Ancient text scrolled across its surface, accompanied by a holographic display of what appeared to be star charts. "This can't be right," Zelia muttered, studying the glyphs. "These coordinates, they're impossible." Kaelin moved closer, close enough to catch the subtle floral scent that always seemed to surround her. "Why impossible?" "Because they point to," she was cut off by a sudden tremor that shook the entire chamber. The floor began to shift, sections dropping away to reveal a labyrinth of mechanical defenses below. "Move." Kaelin grabbed Zelia's arm, pulling her back as the pedestal sank into the floor. They ran for the nearest solid ground, but the collapse was spreading faster than they could retreat. "The exits are sealing," Zelia shouted, pointing to the heavy stone doors sliding into place. They reached a stable platform, but it was rapidly becoming an island in a sea of activated defense mechanisms. Laser grids, pressure plates, and what appeared to be some form of quantum destabilization field filled the space below. "Well," Kaelin said, noting how they were now forced to stand very close together on the limited safe space, "this is cozy." Zelia turned to face him, their bodies inches apart. "I hope you have a brilliant plan, because I'd rather not die in this shrine, especially not with you." "You wound me," he replied, scanning their surroundings, "and here I thought we were having a moment. The moment will be significantly shorter if we don't figure a way out of this trap." Kaelin studied the pattern of the defense grid below. "See how the laser patterns repeat every 12 seconds? There's a path through, but it would require perfect timing and—" He trailed off, realizing what it meant. Zelia finished his thought, we'd have to move in perfect sync. Together. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the danger around them seemed to fade into the background. Kaelin became acutely aware of how her hand had come to rest on his chest for balance, and how her breathing had synchronized with his own. Together then, he agreed, trying to ignore the way his pulse quickened at her proximity. Ready to trust me? A small smile played at the corners of her mouth. Don't make me regret this, sentient. The defense grid hummed menacingly beneath them. As Kaelin and Zelia studied the pattern of deadly lasers and quantum fields, their small platform continued to shrink, forcing them closer together with each passing moment. The pattern shifts every 12 seconds, Kaelin observed, his arm instinctively wrapping around Zelia's waist as another section of their platform disappeared, but there's a 3-second window where the fields align. Zelia's skin felt cool against his, her natural bioluminescence casting a soft azure glow between them. And in those 3 seconds, we need to move perfectly in sync, or become very attractive space dust. You already are very attractive space dust, Kaelin quipped, earning an eye roll that couldn't quite hide her smile. Focus, sentient. How do we time this? Kaelin pulled a small device from his belt. Remember that chronometric synchronizer I borrowed from the temporal archives? You mean the one you stole right from under my nose? Zelia's fingers traced the device's edge, brushing against his hand. I'm still annoyed about that. Would it help if I said I was planning to give it to you for your birthday? You don't know when my birthday is. Third lunar cycle of the Centaurian calendar, he replied without hesitation. You mentioned it during the Neptunian heist, right before you shot me. Zelia stared at him, surprise evident in her violet eyes. You remember that? I remember everything about you, Kaelin admitted, then quickly added, strictly for professional reasons, of course. Know thy enemy, and all that. Of course, she echoed, but her tone suggested she didn't believe him any more than he believed himself. The synchronizer beeped, indicating the next window approaching. Kaelin activated it, creating a temporal bubble around them that would help them move in perfect synchronization. Ready? He asked, positioning himself behind her, his hands on her hips to guide their movement. Just, don't let go, Zelia whispered, and for once, there was no teasing in her voice. They moved as one through the deadly maze, their bodies pressed together as they navigated each precise step. The temporal bubble made their movements fluid, but the intimate proximity was affecting them both in ways the device couldn't control. Left, Kaelin murmured against her ear, now right, hold. They froze as a quantum field passed inches from them. Zelia's back was pressed against his chest, and he could feel her heart racing, or maybe it was his own. You're trembling, she observed softly. Adrenaline, he lied. Liar. They reached a larger platform that seemed more stable than the others. Ancient control panels lined its edges, their surfaces still actively displaying data in a language neither of them recognized. We need to disable the security system, Zelia said, reluctantly stepping away from him to examine the panels. But this technology, it's unlike anything I've seen. Kaelin joined her, noticing how the glyphs seemed to shift and change as they watched. It's responding to our presence. Look, the patterns change when we move closer together. Testing his theory, they stepped closer to each other. The glyphs aligned differently, forming new configurations. It's not just a security system, Zelia realized, it's a test. A test of what? Trust. She turned to face him, their faces inches apart. The shrine's defenses didn't activate because we triggered them. They activated because we were competing instead of cooperating. Kaelin processed this, remembering their earlier race through the shrine. So all this time, we've been doing exactly what the shrine's designers expected. They built this place to force collaboration. Zelia's hand found his, intertwining their fingers. The system won't deactivate until we prove we can work together, completely. The control panel pulsed with new energy as their hands joined. Kaelin looked down at their interlocked fingers, then back at her face. You know what this means. That we have to trust each other. Entirely. Her free hand came to rest on his chest, right over his heart. That's a dangerous proposition, sentient. I'm a dangerous man, he replied, his voice low. Prove it, Zelia's eyes held a challenge. Tell me something you've never told anyone else. Something true. Kaelin hesitated, then decided that if they were testing trust, he might as well go all in. Remember the Cygnus caves, when I locked you in that supply closet?
Hoe kult I forget?
I didn't do it to slow you down. I did it because I needed 2 minutes to compose myself after seeing you in that environmental suit. Zelia's eyes widened slightly. That tight, transparent one?
Tatsächlich.
Kalen felt his face heat up. Your turn.
Fair is fair.
She bit her lower lip, considering.
The Neptunian heißt.
I didn't actually need to shoot you. I knew it.
I just.
She looked away, her azure skin darkening in what he realized was a blush. I needed an excuse to tend to your wound afterward. The control panel's light intensified, bathing them in a soft glow. Around them, the defense grid began to power down, sections of the floor rising back into place. It's working, Kalen observed, though neither of them moved apart. The shrine's accepting our trust fall. Is that what we are calling this? Gina's thumb traced circles on his chest. Because it feels like something else entirely. The last of the defense systems deactivated, leaving them standing in the restored chamber. The pedestal rose again from the floor, but this time, instead of star charts, it displayed a different set of coordinates and a message. Only together can the greatest treasures be found. Zelia read aloud, well, that's not subtle at all. Kalen laughed, but his hand remained entwined with hers.
So, what now?
Now, Zelia said, stepping even closer, we have a choice to make. We can go back to being rivals, or... Her free hand slid up to his neck, pulling him down slightly, or we can admit that this competition between us has always been about something else entirely. The shrine's inner chamber had grown quiet, save for the soft hum of ancient technology and their synchronized breathing. Kalen and Zelia stood before the pedestal, studying the new coordinates while acutely aware of their still joined hands. These coordinates, Kalen mused, they're pointing to the Crimson Void sector. That's unexplored territory. Zelia nodded, her thumb absently caressing his palm. The radiation storms make it nearly impossible to navigate. Nearly.
You thinking what I'm thinking?
That we could combine your ship's advanced shielding with my navigation systems? She turned to face him, violet eyes sparkling. It would work. Together, we could reach it. The word together hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Kalen found himself studying her face, noting how the shrine's bioluminescent light played across her features. We should probably make camp for the night, he suggested, his voice rougher than intended. The storms outside are getting worse, and we need to plan our approach. Agreed, Zelia released his hand to access her wrist computer, but stayed close.
Lyra, Status Report on the Stardust Vagabond.
Ship systems are secure, Captain Rourke, the AI responded. However, the atmospheric disturbance will prevent safe departure for approximately 12 standard hours. Kalen raised an eyebrow. You're still connected to my ship's AI. From the Cygnus Caves incident, Zelia admitted with a mischievous smile. I may have done more than just pick that lock.
Minx.
They set up camp in a protected alcove, using supplies from their emergency packs. Kalen activated portable lighting, while Zelia established a security perimeter. Their movements were fluid, complementary, as if they'd been working together for years instead of hours. You know, Zelia said, watching him unpack equipment, for a sentient, you're surprisingly adaptable. Most species take cycles to adjust to new partnerships. Is that what we're calling this? Kalen asked, removing his jacket as the chamber temperature regulated.
A partnership?
What would you call it? Before he could answer, the shrine systems activated again, projecting a holographic map of the Crimson Void. Kalen moved to study it, his bare torso gleaming in the mixed light of their camp and the ancient technology. These energy signatures, he muttered, leaning over one of the ancient tech tables, they're unlike anything I've seen before. He became so absorbed in the data that he didn't notice Zelia's approach until he felt her presence behind him. When he turned, she was leaning against the table, in a pose that made his breath catch. This is your only chance, sentient male, she declared, her voice both playful and intense. Act now, or regret forever. Time seemed to freeze as Kalen took in the scene before him. The way her body sculptor caught the light, the knowing look in her eyes, the slight smile playing at her lips. He realized with sudden clarity that this moment had been building since their first meeting years ago. No more regrets, he murmured, closing the distance between them. Their first kiss was electric, literally. Her natural bioluminescence created tiny sparks where their lips met. Kalen pulled back slightly, startled, but Zelia's laugh was warm and inviting. That's normal, she assured him, her fingers tracing patterns on his chest. My species, we glow brighter when we're excited. Indeed, her skin was emanating a stronger azure light, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. Kalen found it mesmerizing. You're beautiful, he whispered, meaning it more than any words he'd ever spoken. What followed was a night of discovery, of learning each other in ways their years of rivalry had only hinted at. They found that their bodies fit together as perfectly as their minds did, that their differences only enhanced their connection. Later, as they lay together on their makeshift bed, Zelia's head resting on his chest, Kalen traced the luminescent patterns on her skin. I should have done this years ago, he admitted. We weren't ready years ago, Zelia replied, her fingers drawing lazy circles on his abdomen. We needed all that time, the competition, the chase, the near misses. It made us who we are now. And who are we now? She propped herself up on an elbow, her hair cascading over them both like a cobalt waterfall. Partners. In every way that matters. The shrine systems hummed in apparent approval, the coordinates for the crimson void glowing brighter. You realize, Kalen said, tucking a strand of hair behind her pointed ear, that this changes everything about how we work? It makes us better, Zelia stated confidently. Think about it, we've always been strongest when we work together, even as rivals. Now. Her smile turned wicked, we'll be unstoppable. Kalen pulled her down for another kiss, marveling at how right this felt. The greatest treasures can only be found together, he quoted the shrine's message. Speaking of treasures, she murmured against his lips, we should probably start planning our approach to those coordinates. Probably, he agreed, making no move to get up. Or, we could take advantage of those 12 hours Lyra mentioned. Zelia's answering smile was all the response he needed. The twin suns rose over the shrine ruins as Kalen and Zelia prepared their ships for departure. The storm had cleared, leaving behind a crystalline morning that seemed to mirror their newfound clarity. Lyra, Kalen called out as he worked on connecting the ship systems, begin integration protocol with the Azure Phantom's navigation matrix. Integration initiated, Captain, Lyra responded, though I should note that Miss Valerius's AI Astra seems rather protective of her algorithms. Zelia laughed from where she was adjusting her ship's shield harmonics. That's because Astra knows your reputation with foreign systems, Lyra. I have no idea what you're implying, the AI replied primly. Kalen wiped his brow, admiring how Zelia's natural glow seemed brighter in the morning light, playing nice with others. Playing nice with others isn't exactly our strong suit, is it? Wasn't Zelia corrected? Sauntering over to inspect his work, she placed a hand on his shoulder, sending pleasant tinges down his spine. Tings schanget. The previous night had changed everything, yet, somehow nothing at all. Their banter remained, but now it carried an undercurrent of intimate knowledge, of shared secrets and tender moments. Synchronization complete, Astra announced from the Azure Phantom, though I must say, Lyra's approach to power distribution is rather sentient. Is that an insult or a compliment? Kalen asked, amused. Both AIs replied simultaneously. As they finished the preparations, Kalen caught Zelia studying the shrine's final data readout. Having second thoughts? About the Crimson Void. No, she turned to face him, her violet eyes serious, about us. Also no. But I am thinking about something. Share with the class, sentient. XY Laren relationships are rare, she said, her fingers absently tracing the patterns on his chest. Not impossible, obviously, but complex. Kalen caught her hand, bringing it to his lips. I like complex. Clearly, she smirked. But there's something you should know. My species. When we form deep connections, they become physical manifestations. The bioluminescence you've noticed, it's already starting to respond to your presence. Indeed, where their skin touched, her natural glow pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. Is that dangerous? Only to my reputation as an independent operator, she teased, but her eyes held a deeper emotion. It means I'm literally lighting up for you, Kalen Rourke. My body is choosing you, whether my mind wants to be practical about it or not. The vulnerability in her admission touched something deep within him. Then we'll be impractical together. Their kiss was interrupted by Lyra's pointed throat-clearing sound. Ships are ready for launch, captains. Though I do enjoy watching sentients attempt to mate, we have a schedule to keep.
Lyra. What?
I have been studying human mating rituals, Astra added. Zelia burst out laughing at Kalen's mortified expression. Oh, I'm going to enjoy having her around. They boarded the Stardust Vagabond together, having decided to leave the Azure Phantom in a stable orbit as backup. The ship's interior felt different with Zelia aboard, warmer, more alive. She immediately began programming the navigation coordinates, while Kalen initiated launch sequences. The Crimson Void's radiation will start affecting systems about 6 hours in, she reported, her fingers dancing across the controls. That's when we'll need both ships' combined shielding. And that's assuming we don't run into any unfriendly attention, Kalen added, settling into the pilot seat. The Void's been off limits for a reason. Zelia slid into the co-pilot's chair, her leg brushing against his.
Afraid.
Terrified, he admitted with a grin, but in a good way. The ship lifted off smoothly, breaking through the atmosphere in a controlled burn. As they achieved orbit, the Azure Phantom fell into formation beside them, its systems linking seamlessly with theirs. You know, Zelia mused as they set course for the Void, this is the first time we've actually flown together, instead of chasing each other. Having regrets? She reached over, her hand finding his on the controls. Not a single one. The next few hours passed in comfortable efficiency, their years of individual expertise melding into an impressive collaborative force. They traded stories of past adventures, filling in the gaps of times they'd nearly crossed paths or deliberately avoided each other. Remember the Plutonian vaults? Zelia asked as they shared a meal in the ship's small galley. I always wondered how you got out of there. Kalen choked slightly on his drink. Would you believe? I didn't? I spent 3 days hiding in the ventilation system, watching you search for me. He shrugged at her astonished expression. I was too busy admiring your determination to think about escaping. You impossible man, she said fondly, her skin pulsing with that now familiar glow. We wasted so much time. Not wasted, he corrected, pulling her onto his lap. Preparation. Training. Getting ready for this. Their moment was interrupted by Lyra's urgent alert. Radiation levels increasing ahead of schedule. Nebula boundary approaching. They rushed back to the bridge, professionalism taking over despite their desire to continue exploring this new aspect of their relationship. The viewscreen showed the massive crimson clouds looming before them, shot through with veins of dangerous energy. Ready to make history? Kalen asked, his hand steady on the controls. Zelia's answering smile was brilliant. With you? Always. The Crimson Void lived up to its reputation. Massive clouds of scarlet gas swirled around the Stardust Vagabond, while ribbons of radiation danced across the shields in mesmerizing patterns. Kalen and Zelia worked in seamless coordination at the helm, their movements synchronized as if they'd been partners for years. Shield harmonics dropping to 60%, Lyra announced. The radiation is more intense than our initial readings suggested. Zelia's fingers flew across the navigation console, her skin glowing brighter with concentration. The Azure Phantom's backup systems are compensating, but we're burning through power faster than expected. We need to find shelter until the next radiation wave passes, Kalen said, scanning the sensor readings. There, that asteroid field might provide enough cover. As they maneuvered through the field, their combined expertise showed its worth. Kalen's piloting skills complemented Zelia's navigational instincts perfectly, allowing them to thread through gaps that would have been impossible for either of them alone. You know, Zelia commented as they settled into a relatively stable position, watching you handle those controls is surprisingly attractive. Kalen grinned without taking his eyes off the readouts. Only surprisingly? Well, I used to find it irritating how good you were at everything. Now, it's inspiring. The ship shuddered as another radiation wave hit their shields. Warning lights flashed across the console, and Zelia's glow dimmed momentarily in response to the power fluctuation. Are you all right? Kalen asked, noting her reaction. My species is sensitive to energy fields, she explained, steadying herself. It's usually an advantage, but in here. She gestured at the nebula surrounding them. It's a bit overwhelming. Kaelin reached over, taking her hand. Where their skin met, her natural luminescence strengthened, pushing back against the nebula's influence. Better. Much, she breathed, violet eyes meeting his. You're grounding me somehow. I've never experienced anything like it. Lyra, status report. Shields holding at 45%. The radiation wave will pass in approximately 6 hours. However, ship systems are showing unusual energy patterns. The interaction between sentient and XY Laren biology appears to be creating a localized stabilizing effect. Zelia looked thoughtful. That's why the shrine test focused on cooperation. It wasn't just about trust, it was about biological compatibility. You mean we're literally better together? Kaelin asked, amused. Apparently, sentient physiology has some unique properties that complement XY Laren energy patterns, she stood, pulling him up with her. We should test this theory. For scientific purposes, of course. Of course, he agreed solemnly, though his eyes danced with mischief. Purely professional research. They retreated to the captain's quarters, where the radiation's effects were less pronounced. As they explored this new aspect of their connection, they discovered that their physical intimacy indeed created a bubble of stability around them, their combined energy patterns harmonizing with and strengthening each other. Later, as they lay entwined, Zelia's bioluminescence painting intricate patterns across their skin, she murmured, "Your species never ceases to amaze me. You're so young in galactic terms, yet you possess qualities that even the oldest races don't understand." Like what? Like this, ability to adapt, to complement other species in ways that shouldn't be possible. Her fingers traced the outline of his jaw. The universe is vast and often hostile, yet sentients just dive in headfirst, making connections, building bridges. It's remarkable. Kaelin caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. Maybe we're just too stubborn to know better. Maybe that's exactly what the galaxy needs. Their moment was interrupted by Lyra's urgent announcement. Captains, the radiation wave is shifting course. We have approximately 20 minutes before our current position becomes untenable. They sprang into action, their newly strengthened connection evident in how smoothly they worked together. As they prepared the ship for emergency maneuvers, Zelia's glow pulsed in sync with the ship systems, providing instant feedback on power fluctuations. The Azure Phantom's shields are failing, Astra reported, attempting to route power. No, Zelia said suddenly. Don't fight it, Kaelin. Remember how our energy patterns stabilized each other. He caught on immediately. Lyra, prepare to synchronize shield harmonics with the Azure Phantom. Match the frequency to Zelia's bioluminescence pattern. That's highly unorthodox, Captain, Lyra protested. Welcome to working with sentients, Zelia grinned, placing her hands on the console. Her natural glow intensified, spreading through the ship systems like liquid light. Kaelin placed his hands over hers, and the effect amplified dramatically. The shields of both ships began to pulse in harmony, creating a bubble of stable space around them that pushed back against the nebula's chaos. It's working, Lyra announced, surprise evident in her artificial voice. Shield strength increasing to 70%, 80, 90. Now that's what I call teamwork, Kaelin said, pulling Zelia close as they watched the radiation wave pass harmlessly around their synchronized shields. She turned in his embrace, her eyes bright with excitement and something deeper. You impossible, brilliant sentient. You're going to change everything I thought I knew about the universe. And you. That's the plan, he replied, sealing the promise with a kiss. The synchronized energy field surrounding their ships had an unexpected effect on the nebula's crimson clouds. Where before there had been only chaotic swirls of radiation, now distinct patterns emerged, like pathways through the cosmic storm. Lyra, are you seeing this? Kaelin asked, studying the sensor readings. Affirmative. The interaction between your combined biological signatures and the nebula's radiation is creating stable corridors of traversable space. Zelia leaned forward, her natural glow pulsing with excitement. It's like the nebula is responding to us. Astra, analyze these energy patterns. The pathways appear to lead deeper into the nebula, Astra reported. They correlate with the coordinates from the shrine. As they followed these newly revealed routes, Kaelin noticed something different about Zelia's bioluminescence. The usual azure tones now contain threads of gold, creating mesmerizing patterns across her skin. "Your glow is changing," he observed, reaching out to trace one of the golden lines on her arm. Zelia examined herself with wonder. This is unprecedented. XY Laren biology can be influenced by strong emotional bonds, but this level of physical adaptation. She met his eyes. "You're literally changing my cellular structure, Kaelin. Is that dangerous?" "No," she smiled, taking his hand. "It's extraordinary. My people have encountered countless species, but we've never achieved this level of biological harmony with any of them." Their moment was interrupted by a sudden surge in the ship's power readings. The nebula's radiation had intensified, but instead of threatening their shields, it seemed to be feeding them energy. "Fascinating," Lyra commented. "The nebula appears to be nurturing your connection." Over the next several days, as they navigated deeper into the Crimson Void, the changes in Zelia became more pronounced. Her energy patterns grew stronger, more intertwined with both ship systems and Kaelin's own biorhythms. Their nights together became more than just passion. They were a fusion of energies that left both of them transformed. One morning, as they lay in their quarters, watching the nebula's light play across the ceiling, Zelia made a discovery that would change everything. "Kaelin," she whispered, her hand pressed against her abdomen, where her glow pulsed with a new, distinct pattern. I think we've created something impossible." He propped himself up on an elbow, noting the mixture of awe and uncertainty in her voice. "What do you mean?" "My species. We can only conceive with perfectly compatible genetic patterns. It's why our population is so carefully controlled. But this..." She guided his hand to where the golden light swirled beneath her skin. "This is a new life. Our child." Kaelin felt the pulse of energy under his palm, strong and steady. "But how?" "Because you're sentient," she laughed softly. "Your species' greatest strength is making the impossible possible. You adapt, you overcome, you rewrite the rules of what should and shouldn't work." He pulled her close, marveling at how the nebula's light seemed to dance in celebration around them. "Are you okay with this? It's not exactly what we planned when we started this treasure hunt." "I think," Zelia said thoughtfully, "that this is the greatest treasure we could have found." Her eyes sparkled with mischief, "though I still intend to claim whatever's waiting for us at those coordinates." Their discussion was cut short by Astra's alert. "Captains, we're approaching a significant anomaly. The nebula appears to be parting." They rushed to the bridge, still adjusting their clothes, to find a spectacular sight. The crimson clouds were indeed separating, revealing a massive structure floating in a pocket of clear space. It appeared to be a station of some kind, its architecture a blend of organic curves and crystalline surfaces that caught and reflected the nebula's light. "Energy signatures match the shrine's technology," Lyra reported, "but they're orders of magnitude stronger." "Look at those docking ports," Zelia pointed out. "They're designed for ships of different configurations. This wasn't built by a single species." Kaelin studied the structure, noting how it seemed to pulse in rhythm with their shields. "It's responding to us, just like the nebula did." "The ultimate testament to cooperation between species," Zelia mused, her hand unconsciously moving to her abdomen. Maybe that's what this was all about, proving that the greatest achievements come from bringing different peoples together. "Speaking of bringing things together," Kaelin said, pulling her into his arms, "I think we've proven that point pretty thoroughly." Her answering kiss was electric, literally. Sparks of golden light danced between them, making the ship's systems hum in harmony. "Lyra," Kaelin called out without breaking away from Zelia, "begin docking procedures." "Of course, Captain. Though I feel compelled to remind you that the bridge is not the appropriate location for continued celebration of your biological compatibility." Zelia laughed against his lips. "She has a point. We should save our energy for exploring that station." "Always the professional," he teased. "Not always," she replied with a wicked smile. "But right now, we have a mystery to solve and a treasure to claim. After that..." Her glow intensified suggestively. "We can discuss the future. All three of us." The ancient station's docking clamps secured both ships with a resonating hum that matched the pulse of Zelia's bioluminescence. As they prepared to board, Kalen noticed how the station's crystalline surfaces seemed to respond to their presence, shifting from deep crimson to a harmonious blend of azure and gold. "Lyra, status report on external communications?" Kalen asked, checking his gear. "The nebula's radiation still blocks conventional signals," the AI replied. "However, I'm detecting quantum entanglement channels built into the station structure. They appear to be activating in response to your combined energy signatures." Zelia adjusted her body sculptor, which now seemed to shimmer with the same golden threads that marked her changing biology. "Someone's going to notice that. The HFY Science Council monitors all quantum communications in the sector." "Having second thoughts?" Kalen asked, pulling her close. "About us?" "Never," she traced the line of his jaw with a finger that left trails of light in its wake. "About dealing with the bureaucratic nightmare headed our way?" "Maybe a little." The station's main chamber took their breath away. Vast windows revealed the nebula's dance, while holographic displays activated around them, showing data in dozens of languages. At the chamber's center stood a pillar of pure energy, its patterns matching the golden swirls beneath Zelia's skin. "It's a research station," Zelia realized, studying the displays. "Dedicated to studying interspecies relationships, particularly between energy-sensitive races and sentients." Kalen whistled low. "How long has this been here?" "According to these readings, over 10,000 years." She turned to him, violet eyes wide. "Kalen, we're not the first. There have been others like us throughout history. But never with these results." Before he could respond, the quantum channels hummed to life. Multiple communications arrived simultaneously, from the HFY Science Council, the Sentient Exploration Corps, and several other interested parties. "Well," Kalen said, "that didn't take long." The next few hours were a blur of explanations and negotiations. The HFY Council was particularly interested in Zelia's pregnancy, while the Sentient Exploration Corps seemed more focused on the station's technological implications. Through it all, Kalen and Zelia maintained physical contact, their energy patterns strengthening each other. "This is unprecedented," the HFY chief scientist declared via hologram. "A viable sentient HFY hybrid should be impossible. Yet your cellular structures have achieved perfect harmony." "Sentients do have a way of making the impossible possible," Zelia replied proudly, her fingers intertwined with Kalen's. The Sentient Corps representative leaned forward. "The real question is, what happens now?" Kalen felt Zelia tense beside him. This was the moment they'd been dreading, the possibility that their discovery would lead to separation, to becoming test subjects rather than partners. But Kalen Rourke hadn't become the galaxy's most successful treasure hunter by playing by others' rules. "What happens now," he announced, pulling Zelia closer, "is that we're getting married. Both sentient and HFY ceremonies. Then we're going to continue exploring the station, and others like it, together. You can study our findings, but we remain free agents." The representatives erupted in protests and counterproposals, but fell silent when Zelia's glow suddenly intensified, filling the chamber with brilliant light. The energy pillar responded, creating a display of all the sentient HFY pairs throughout history who had found their way to the station. "This facility wasn't built to control or study us like specimens," Zelia declared. "It was built to celebrate these connections, to prove that the greatest achievements in the galaxy come not from separation, but from union." The HFY Council members' own bioluminescence flickered in response to her words. The sentient representatives looked thoughtful. "Perhaps." The chief scientist said slowly, "We could establish a collaborative research initiative, with you two as independent consultants, of course. And the station as a neutral zone for future interspecies couplings." The Sentient Corps added, hours later. After the negotiations were complete and the communications ended, Kalen and Zelia stood alone before the massive windows. The nebula had cleared further, creating a permanent safe zone around the station. "So," Kalen said, pulling her into his arms, "was it worth it? That night in the shrine, when you told me it was my only chance." Zelia's laugh was like starlight. "I knew even then that you were different, that we could be something extraordinary together." Her hand guided his to her abdomen, where their child's energy pulsed, strong and steady. Though I didn't expect quite this level of extraordinary. Any regrets? Just one, she murmured, pressing closer. That we wasted so much time competing, when we could have been doing this. Their kiss was electric, sending ripples through the station's energy field. The golden threads in Zelia's bioluminescence brightened, weaving patterns that matched the nebula's dance outside. You know, Kalen said between kisses, we still haven't properly explored the living quarters section of the station. Always the treasure hunter, Zelia teased, but her eyes sparkled with promise. What do you hope to find there? Oh, I already found my greatest treasure, he replied, lifting her into his arms. But I'm thinking we should conduct some thorough research. For science. Of course, she agreed solemnly, though her glow pulsed with anticipation. We have a duty to future sentient XY Laren couples, after all. As they made their way through the station's crystalline corridors, their laughter echoing off ancient walls that had waited millennia for just such a union, both knew that this was only the beginning of their story. The universe was vast, full of mysteries waiting to be discovered, treasures to be found, and moments to be shared. And they would face it all together, their love lighting the way through whatever adventures awaited them.